Hey, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, hi Van. Can you hear
Hi,
me
Danny.
okay?
How you doing? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, good,
Oh,
thank you.
good.
Yeah, I wasn't too sure, but I figured this would be the right time. It would be a
Yeah.
good time for you. So
Hopefully it's not too late for you.
no, it's perfect actually. I mean, I'm kind of a night owl anyway, so yeah, I mean,
Aren't we all in this
absolutely. I mean,
business?
oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and just with everything going on, there's it's just craziness, isn't it? Really, crazy
Yeah.
world.
What's it like in UK? I assume are you in London or
Well, just outside of London, actually, just outside. A train
okay.
away, like
Right.
20 about half an hour away on the train. So, but
Yeah. I'm kind of the same in LA. I'm not in LA proper. I'm about 40 minutes south
I
of
mean,
Los
like
Angeles.
where kind of where we are is kind of suburbia, like
Hmm.
I,
Yep.
I bet that's kind of the equivalent to you as well, in LA.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I'm quite glad because, yeah, I mean, I prefer being not anywhere near kind of London. I mean, a bit like it's probably a bit quite similar to LA, just away from all the craziness, and
Yeah, it's generally a good idea, I have to say.
and then
Y- Go ahead.
yeah, no, and then like just over this kind of past year, I decided to do books, and
Hmm.
I was watching films and I was coming up with ideas, and I got with a publisher, and I mean my first book is going to be out around September, or
Nice.
so and
That's
I'm
the one on Hell. That's the one on Hellraiser.
yes, the one on Hellraiser 3. Yes, yeah, that's right. War is Hell, making of Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth, and I managed to snag my final interview for the book, um, which was with Pinhead. So and I did that like over a week ago now, but that's being the transcript's being edited. So
Right.
once that's in the book, that's it. It's ready to go. It's just it'll be out there.
Nice.
And then of course I did one. Well, I kind of finished it, but I'm just waiting for Chuck Russell to have a look over it for the mask as well.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm sure you're aware. I'm sure you've worked with some of those guys as well. So a lot of the ILM guys and
Yeah.
um, that's,
I
that's
didn't. I never worked with Chuck Russell, although I wandered through his set for the Blob when we were working on The Abyss, as I recall. So it was that was kind of interesting.
and what's funny about that as well is Van is that that was kind of more practical effects as well. So it's kind of there was not
Yep.
there's no CGI in that film, or none that I can
Yeah.
think of off the top of my head anyway. It was more kind of
Yeah.
practical because it was like
Yeah.
88, 89, something like
Yeah.
that.
Around
Yeah.
there.
So I mean, because
Yeah.
that's when you did the Abyss, so that must have been
Yeah.
around that time, But
Yeah. We would have started working directly with DreamQuest on that for some of the motion control underwater uh, submersible stuff uh, in uh, in the first half of '89 because we shot in the tanks and stuff at the last half of '88. So yeah, I was fortunate enough to kind of be in the old school because that's how I grew up in old school visual effects and kind of got to be on the ground floor as as the technology became more digital, and then had the ability to embrace the digital stuff. So I'm an old timer in that regard.
I mean, I'm guessing that was kind of my first question: how did you end up in visual effects? And you've kind of just
Well,
said it really.
yeah, well, I mean, I think I've been a fan of visual effects and science fiction, fantasy, and all of that kind of stuff for since childhood. Between the Harryhausen films and watching the reruns of Star Trek, I was only 2 when it came out, so I was watching reruns in the early '70s, and so I was into that. I was into disaster movies, which of course means lots of visual effects. and practical effects, miniatures and all that kind of stuff back in the day. So, you know, and back in those days, we had 8mm cameras. I didn't even have a Super 8 camera. I had a regular 8 camera, which is actually a double 8mm, which is the kind where the camera is a wind up, and the film cartridges are 16mm, and you would put the cartridge in, film for 25 feet on one side, take it out, turn it over, put it back in the other way, and shoot the other 50 feet, other 25 feet, for a total of 50 feet, so that when you sent it off to develop it, they would split it down the middle. So, you know, one half of the 16 and the other half of the 16 were 8mm. So that's how they used to do that. So I would work on, you know, trying to, you know, replicate very poorly the effects that I'd seen in movies and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of how I got interested in it, you know, doing a little bit of stop motion, you know, with clay and so on. And then of course, Star Wars came out, and that changed everything for everybody, because all of a sudden it became this thing that wasn't just for a bunch of geeks who
Yeah,
you know, were in the margins. It opened up the doors in a lot of cases. And so I ended up, you know, devouring all of that and every film that came out in the 80s, and graduated from high school in 82, went to film school at USC, which was George Lucas's alma mater, and went through that whole program, and came out and had the wildest opportunity of my life out of the blue, simply because I wanted to do a Halloween costume. You got the link I sent you, I assume, and you've probably seen that video before.
yes, I had a look on your on the website as well, and I had a look at. I've seen your CV and stuff as well. So yeah,
Mhm.
very interesting. You know, very
Yeah,
interesting.
so that was a very fortuitous thing, and I mean, it's not the same as Steven Spielberg putting in bricks in a briefcase and wandering into an empty office and pretending it's his until they gave him work. But I, as you saw in the video, I made a Halloween costume just on my own because I love aliens so much, and ended up
Cameron,
getting Jim's attention,
yeah,
and all of that, and that's kind of how it started. He gave me my first opportunity to work with stuff, because he came from this kind of background. He came from, you know,
matte painting
being,
with Escape from New York. You know, so
yeah,
you know,
and
the Corman films. You know, he'd started
yeah,
out. You know, he'd started
yeah,
out doing that.
and you know, I got to be his researcher and creative and technical assistant and all of that. The point he started calling me his extra RAM, and you know, got to go through a bunch of great movies with him,
Absolutely.
and then I kind of went off on my own to be a creative director for a little company called Band from the Ranch that Casey Cannon, who was an ILM alum, had started, and so I worked on a lot of films. That was the difference. Working on Jim's films, of course, are huge and they're amazing and fantastic, but you're only doing one every couple of years, you know, 2 or 3 years. I worked with him for 8 years. I think I worked on 4 movies. So,
Wow.
and it's interesting. He told me, you know, when I was thinking, you know, what should I do, where I'm going to go with this, and he said, you know, you've been in the visual effects stuff with us, you know, for so long, and you know, DD is starting up. I'm starting Digital Domain, and he said, you should either go full on into computer stuff and, you know, go like work at DD and do visual effects, which I know you love, or if you want to direct, you should get more time on set and, you know, work on things on set. And, you know, since he's only making a movie every few years, you know, the way to get set experience is to work on other shows. So what I ended up doing was combining both of his suggestions. I went and started working on set using computers. And what that was doing a lot of screen graphics, because that's the other thing you know, and you'll see a lot of that kind of thing in Soldier that we did. because we ended up making a name for ourselves at Band for the Ranch for doing screen graphics. Because now, in the old days, computers were just TV monitors with, video playing on them, pretending like they were computers. And the technology was very simple. It was just video playback. And people would make graphics and stuff on either real computers and output them to tape, and then play the tapes back on set to make it look like you're working on a computer. And we were in this first wave of shows where, started with Jurassic Park, which I didn't work on, but I knew the folks who worked on that, and
Steve Spaz Williams is another one.
Well, he was one of the guys he was one of the animators at ILM.
That's
he was interested in doing visual effects. There were folks who were doing this, in Jurassic Park, for instance. The whole thing was they had all these computers in the control center, and the big deal at that point was that it was all Silicon Graphics machines, which were product placed, the same way you do with cigarettes and cars and everything else. Silicon Graphics, who were the de facto computer company that had the super powerful computers that were used for everything from Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park and so on, they decided as a company that they wanted to get their name out there. And so they made a deal with Amblin and Spielberg's company on Jurassic Park and Universal to have their computers not only used to make the dinosaurs behind the scenes, but to have their computers on set with their logos. It's kind of like doing product placement for Dell or Apple, in the movies. And they did it as the basically one and only brute force, giant, high-end computer company. And so in Jurassic Park, you see Silicon Graphics machines, and they make the big deal about, this is Unix, I know this, right? And so that started, that started a trend where, well, this is an actual Silicon Graphics machine. Maybe we can use it to actually do playback with higher resolution graphics. That was always the challenge, because when you use just video as your monitor, doesn't matter how big your monitor is, the image was only 640 by 480, because that was, at least in the United States, it was standard definition video. So the graphics never looked any better than that. But now everybody was seeing computers had higher resolution than video. And so it made sense that, oh, well, Silicon Graphics can do this. And we went through some real challenges. My first film using Silicon Graphics machines as product placement was Congo, Frank Marshall's film. In 95, came out in 95. We shot it in 94. Yeah, and it was a really interesting challenge, because in those days, video monitors, you could adjust the color because they always come out shooting blue when you see them on screen, right? Their monitors are always cold because of the color temperature of the rasters, and on video, you had the ability to change the colors and warm them up a little bit. Not so much with the computer screens. They were just what they were, and they were cold. And we were shooting with Alan Davio, the DP, who did E.T. and all sorts of things, and he wanted them to look natural. He didn't want it just to be, you go into the computer display room and everything's blue, and the light is all blue. And so we had to come up with ways of adjusting the computer monitors, which really weren't designed to do this quite as much, to change their color temperature, to try to make them so that they looked more natural. And on top of that, we had to create all these graphics, which I love doing. I love doing screen graphics. And we created a whole bunch of things, multi-screen windows and so on. And one of the things we found that was killing us was that if we wanted to have like a video image cover the entire screen of a 4 times the resolution Silicon Graphics computer monitor as opposed to a video like a television monitor, the Silicon Graphics machines couldn't do it. They couldn't play like a regular TV could the image full screen. They could only play it in a 640 by 480 window, which drove us crazy because we had to figure out how to do that. Meanwhile, on all of these other systems like Apple and PC, they were cheaper machines. They weren't these brute force, super high resolution. They had the ability to scale things. And we were building all of our graphics on Macintoshes, because that's what I used. And we had Silicon Graphics machines that we had to then program with little programs that would display stuff and get them to try to figure out how to play them back. And we could never play full video. And it drove us crazy, and it drove the people at Silicon Graphics crazy, because it makes perfect sense. You like, we want to see an image full screen, you know, a video image. Well, we really can't do that. We can play it back at real time, but it's going to be regular window, because the time or the calculations it took to scale it up for that particular, you know, Unix system was apparently very, very difficult. So it was really kind of funny that the highest quality, you know, highest speed systems couldn't play something very simple. And that was because they had the brute force to be able to do all the calculations and put things on the screen, and do, you know, real time kind of, you know, move things around and so on, you know, take objects and rotate them. You know, they used to do that. You see some of those things in Jurassic, I think. But playing back a video, not really their forte. Whereas the quote unquote consumer end computers like Macs and PCs didn't have the brute force CPU power. They didn't have the raw power. So they had to come up with shortcuts. And those shortcuts are what made it possible to put things full screen. It was really this weird topsy-turvy thing. But it was really fun, because we ended up being the company that everybody went to do computer playback, as opposed to just video playback, which we also did. But so I ended up working on movies from Congo, and then Twister, and then Dante's Peak and The Relic, and, you know, doing a lot of featured graphics. And those were really fun, because when you're doing graphics, it's one thing to just have, oh, you're supposed to be in a computer lab, let's have a bunch of whizzy things going on the screens in the background. The shows that we worked on were a lot of them about science, or about scientists who were using the technology to, you know, tell the story, to be part of the story. So for Twister, for instance, you know, we knew ILM was going to be doing these fantastic tornado simulations and visual effects shots, but nobody could afford to hire ILM to do that all the time. So what that meant was the story was designed to kind of be like Jaws. You only see the shark in the big scenes, you know, the big climactic scenes. In the meantime, you're seeing the traces of it, the hints of it, the shadows of it. And those were what we were creating on the computers. And so we had to be able to substitute in for the real deal by being the shadows, the footprints, if you will, of the dinosaur. And we had to have actors who were able to sit there and stare at screens and go, oh my God, it looks like it's turning towards us. And we have to create a graphic that gives that impression. So it was really fun, because we were really part of the storytelling. It was like, okay, what do we need to see? We need, you know, the dialogue says they see this is happening. And then our job was to say, okay, in real life, if we want to make this realistic, how would we do it? And so one of my favorite parts of doing these movies was the research, because I would go hang out with the National Severe Storms Laboratory people for tornadoes, or I would walk the lava flows in Hawaii with the volcanologists to learn about how they study and monitor volcanic activity and what their graphics would look like. And my favorite trick was to say, okay, if computers could do anything, what would you want them to be able to do for real, for your science? Well, we want to be able to monitor these gases and this thing and these kind of tremors, and have a screen that would show us these things. And then I would go and try to design that so that it wasn't just telling a story for an audience where they're looking at it. If I did my job right, I was able to have volcanologists and you know, bacteriologists and meteorologists hopefully look at it and go, man, I wish
That's
we had
accurate.
that.
Or,
Yeah, it's
you know,
number
yeah.
one, it's accurate, or it's, man, I wish we had that for real. So that was the fun part. So we did that for quite a while. And then we also did some kind of more science fiction fantasy kind of graphics for Starship Troopers, for instance, and Soldier, where we have different asks from the director as to what they want. We ended up replacing the people who originally were doing Starship Troopers because their stuff, they were trying to make it very military, which meant that there was really no graphics. It was just a lot of text information going by at the time. And the director, Paul Verhoeven, basically said, this isn't, I'm doing a science fiction movie here with giant bugs and teenagers. So can we make it more kind of fun and more colorful? And I guess he asked a fellow Dutchman, Jan de Bont, who had directed Twister, and said, hey, you guys know anybody? Didn't you guys have a lot of graphics? Yeah, Band for the Rancher, the guy who did that, we had a great time with him. Why don't you get that?
He did Speed as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he did Speed, yeah.
1 and 2.
And so he told Paul Verhoeven, I guess, gave us a recommendation. Paul Verhoeven brought us in and said, we want to make this more lively, more kind of, not so much cartoonish, but kind of, because he was going for a satire.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of, let's try to do Star Trek on steroids,
and
that's what,
it's kind of where, his other science fiction films are kind of very much satires, and it fits into the framework of his, of how he does makes those kinds of films, So, and it's ultra violent, but with humor,
social commentary. Yeah, and it's interesting. Starship Troopers is kind of like Soldier in the fact that it was kind of ahead of its time. It wasn't appreciated as much when it first came out, because people were like, I'm expecting a big space adventure. What the heck is this? The whole FedNet thing, which was one of the things we did at Band for the show, all the FedNet, would you like to know more stuff? And people are stomping on bugs as a way of being patriotic and all of this craziness. And people didn't get it, or they took it seriously. And so they were like, I don't like this. This is kind of almost making fun of us. And
now
it was only years later that it was appreciated for what it was doing. And unfortunately now, years after that, in America, it's actually like that.
So it's like relevant. It's like
it's very relevant. It was very prescient. And Soldier was an interesting deal for that kind of thing as well. They wanted to make it very gritty. Now, Soldier was a different case because we weren't involved in the shooting of it at all. It was we were brought in post-production. So, and I kind of like coming into films in post-production sometimes, because being on set and having to try to get all the computers working is a pain in the neck. I went through that on Twister, where we were out on location in Oklahoma, having to have computers that would work in driving cars. The biggest problem there being under bright sunlight. You can't see any computer screen outside, as anybody who has tried to use a laptop or an iPad out, like on the beach or anything else, would know. You can't see a darn thing because the screens just aren't bright enough. And so you have to do things like put like 12 ND neutral density filters on the windshield just to bring down the brightness outside enough that you could register the exposure of what's on the computer. It was a really interesting set of challenges.
Very challenging, very challenging.
And that, and having computers out in fields where we have to run electrical cables all the way back to a generator, and they're dropping ice cube sized pieces of hail on us for the scenes. Computers don't really like that. So I was fine to do more shots in post. And of course, nowadays, all computer screens, for the most part, are done in post. They're just, blank screens or green screens with tracking markers on them. And then people add the graphics as visual effects. That's starting to swing the other way now. People are starting to put things in so that you get more interaction and reflection and color changes from the screens on people. But it's part of that whole we'll do it in post because we haven't designed it yet kind of problem that that the industry tends to pendulum through sometimes, where it's like, oh, we can do everything green screen now, we don't have to do it for real, and it's safer and it's cheaper. And then it swings back towards, you know what, we're going to do this stunt for real, we're not going to do it all green screen, because people appreciate it when they see a real stunt, real action. It doesn't just feel like everybody's just reacting to nothing. And so that kind of swings back and forth. And Screen Graphics went through the same thing, where we did all of our pre-planning, designing of all the graphics, and they told a story, and you'd be on set, and the actors would respond to them. They would still not know how to use a keyboard and would frantically be pressing buttons, you know, as if, you know, typing faster means that they're hackers. But it gave them things to react to, and the camera could actually get a two-shot of an actor over the shoulder with the graphic, as opposed to him staring at nothing and you know, pointing in an area where it wouldn't be on the screen. He would be able to see what's going on. So that kind of went away because it became easier to just track everything in, and people could figure out what they were going to put in later. And then the pendulum is swinging back a little bit, I think, where it's at least a hybrid of people doing graphics on the set so you could see what was going on. Because people who did playback on set for computers are pretty much now congruent with the people who do visual effects, it means that you can hire somebody to design the visual effects or the screens, and they can either play them back on set, or if they, you know, end up having to change things, they can also do the composites in post-production. And that's kind of the boutique niche we fell into for a little while, in terms of screen graphics, playback, and visual effects work.
Excellent. So, and with like Soldier, you know, there was you know, it was 97, I believe. They shot the film.
They shot the film in 97, which means we worked on it in 98. It didn't come out until October, I believe, of 98. So we were working in 98 in post. And what was interesting there is our only contact essentially was the editorial department and Ed Jones, the visual effects supervisor, who we kind of knew. He was an acquaintance from ILM because Casey knew him from ILM, and you know, we had started making a name for ourselves doing some graphic stuff. And so they, you know, storytelling graphics, not just wallpaper graphics, so that we can do both. And so they came in and asked us, you know, can we do some graphics for them? And so I think it was the crawler screens might have been some of the first bits of graphic that we did. They had graphics. If you watch the film, you'll notice they had some graphics on set, but they were just basically transparencies, backlit transparencies, very military.
That's right.
And they wanted to have stuff that would specifically tell the story points that they needed to do to give them editorial coverage. And that's one of the things we love doing. We love the storytelling process of it. It's like, okay, we're here, we see him looking at the screen, and then he says something about this. What is he going to see that'll help tell that story and make it clear to the audience, but also be kind of whizzy and cool? So so we did the crawler graphics, and you know, kind of made it look like that video game Battle Zone.
Yeah,
the tanks and stuff.
It was like war games, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like,
So,
you know.
And it's always this balance between how realistic you want to make it, how video game you want to make it, because those things are you know, becoming more and more the same to some extent.
Exactly, and it's funny saying that, because the director as well, Paul Anderson, he's known for video game movies as well. So it has,
exactly.
You know, it's like maybe he's put it in as a bit of kind of reference, you know. He'd done Mortal Kombat prior,
right?
So and then it's funny that I think that today just had its 26th anniversary. So you know,
and time flies.
It does, doesn't it? And yeah, no, I mean, I think back to Soldier. I think I mean, it was a huge production. You know, I mean,
Yeah,
when you look at the scale of it, it was phenomenal. And
yeah,
I mean, visual effects, uh, stunt
yeah,
work. I mean, and I must say that I do like how the beginning of the film starts. The exposition is the way it starts is his life. He's born, and then you flash forward
right.
to his training, and then through the wars, and it's done in such a way that it sets up the character so well. It's not needed, it set it
Yeah.
up in a short space of time, but done it so well. I
Well,
think
that
it
was
was.
the interesting thing about the show. We don't generally, especially if we come into it in post, it's more a matter at that point of, you know, we need to do these things editorially. It's like we need inserts, essentially. We need an insert that tells us this graphically because we are trying to cut the time down, so we can't show this whole thing, but we could do it in a graphic, a heads up display that'll tell us everything and us not have to cut to 4 different shots of other things. And so there's this process in which, you've heard the phrase that editorial is the final rewrite of a film. And I'm an editorial guy, so I love that kind of stuff. I love editing, and I love how the storytelling process works.
And you understand
And
it as
and
well.
yeah, and to see what you can do and what you can get away with. It's like, we're getting rid of this whole scene. How do we do this? Well, you can do one ADR line, and it'll fulfill the exact same function as a 3-minute scene. That's one of the things I learned when you're storytelling and you have to cut things down and you have to see how things work. So I love the fact that, they were basically coming in and having us, we need to solve this narrative problem. We need to flow over this little piece of this. And we want to do it with graphics because it makes sense, because half of the storytelling can take place in the graphics and on the people. It's all visual. And so we got to be in part of that process of the storytelling, which is fantastic. And I think that for Soldier, what was interesting was that I never got to meet Paul Anderson. I never met Kurt. I never met anybody. I think I only went to the editorial offices once to deliver some shot.
Martin Hunter
Yeah.
was the editor.
Yeah,
So,
I don't even know if we got to see the editor himself. We may have seen some assistants,
wow,
the
that's
visual, or the
amazing.
visual effects editor.
Really?
But
Wow.
hey, it's no different than the way we work from home nowadays, I guess. I mean, we were working from our offices, but what we were told was, okay, here's a plate we shot, for instance, for the crawler. We have this kind of viewing site with this long, thin green screen portion. Well, we need to fill that in with graphics. So, what we need to show, we've got it cut in a couple different places, and they would oftentimes say, what we're trying to do is get across this. And so they would give us a cut sequence of just that sequence. We never saw the whole movie until the crew screening. So we never got, I don't recall ever getting the script either. But
wow.
we would get a scene, because again, we were one of the minor visual effects houses that were brought in post. We only did 19 shots on the show.
That's
whereas
right.
the Craig Barron, folks from
Craig Barron, there's another one.
And Rhythm and Hughes and Rainmaker, those guys were the big visual effects houses on the show. We were a support team, which was perfectly fine because we still got to influence the story. The other nice thing about it, as opposed to being on set, is that what you're doing. If you're working on shots in post, they're probably going to be in the movie, because some of them were envisioned only in post, and they were envisioned because they're trying to solve a narrative problem or an editorial problem or a time problem.
So it's going in.
Yeah.
So it's going in, exactly.
Yeah, and we also have the ability to, you need to get from point A to point B, we can give you exactly that, as opposed to when you're just working with editorial footage that you shot on the day on the set in production, the principal. It's like, this almost tells it, it'll work for now, but wouldn't it have been great if we had to do this? if it ended on this look as opposed to that look, or, you know, we don't have any takes that show that, but we have something that's close enough to get the point across. And we now, with graphics in certain instances, we have the ability to fix things. I'll tell you a story about Deep Rising, which we worked on for Stephen Sommers. You're familiar with that film?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's it has Famke Janssen and Treat Williams.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's like a throwback to the kind of B movie monster.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
actually a really fun film. They were in post, and they had an ending that ended a certain way where one of the supporting characters was assumed dead. But from the previous screenings, people loved his character a lot. So they went to Malibu and shot a new ending that was the same ending, but they added this person to show that he had survived. But because it was on a boat out in the, it was on a this high-tech cruise ship out in the middle of the ocean, that they then get washed up onto some deserted island.
Island, yeah. That's
Yeah.
right. I remember the ending. Yeah, I remember the.
His friend, the guy who ran the sampan, the jokey guy, played by I think it was Derek O'Connor.
That's right. Yeah, in the Mummy. He was in the Mummy.
He's the guy. He's the comic relief in all of Stephen Sommers' movies, and his character was originally killed off screen in Deep Rising. He gets pulled under and then you don't see him again. And people loved his character. And in the previous, like, man, I wish so-and-so had survived. It would have made it better. And they agreed and said, okay, we're going to reshoot a sequence out at Malibu where he comes, you know, they get there, they've washed ashore, they're all exhausted, and he's been shot in the leg. And so there's no way he could swim. So he comes paddling up on a surfboard. And the question was, where the heck did he get a surfboard? And they made a point to say, oh, well, he has a surfboard because there was a surfboard in the set decoration on the side of the sampan that they crashed into the thing. It's like, okay, that's fine, but nobody's going to remember that the sampan had a surfboard on it, so it's going to feel like it came out of nowhere. And so they came to us and said, we have this visual effects shot where it's a down angle from the height of the cruise ship, seeing the sampan crash into and the explosion blows straight up into camera. And they said, you know, we're trying to solve this problem. We have an idea. Do you think you can pull it off? And I looked at it and said, yeah. And so what we did was we created a digital surfboard. So when the sampan crashes and explodes, we see the surfboard flip up towards camera. So narratively, we have just told the audience that there is a surfboard somewhere near the cruise ship in the scene. So when he comes back on it, at the end in their new reshot ending, it doesn't come out of nowhere. It makes sense. That's the kind of storytelling I love to do.
I have to rewatch that film again because it's been a while. I remember a friend of mine, he introduced it to me, and it's a fun film. You know, it is. You know, it's a fun film. You know, and I don't know if it was a massive success, but I think it became a cult. It's
become more of a cult, you know, like Soldier. You know, I think that some of these films don't get appreciated because people have sometimes this kind of very, well, these are B pictures and they're just horror and shock and gore and science fiction or, you know, space battles or whatever. And they kind of look down on it, you know, because the genres were very kind of split up. There's prestige drama pictures, there's some wacky comedy stuff, and then there is the science fiction fantasy geek stuff, and those were all considered separate. And that's no longer true because, you know, you have shows like, you know, Lord of the Rings that can win the Oscars, you know, or Shape of Water, or, you know.
Or Logan with Hugh Jackman. You know, he got nominated for best script. Best screenplay, you know, so it's like and all these comic book films, and you know,
I think that I was fortunate to be at least not involved in the show per se until afterwards, but on on Aliens. That was one of the first films in which it was a science fiction action movie that was nominated for 7 Oscars, you know,
Which is
including Best
unbelievable.
Actress, you know. So there are times that that kind of thing can happen. So I think that nowadays you can blend genres, and just because it's in a particular genre doesn't mean it should be relegated to just B picture status. And that makes a huge difference, where, you know, people now want to do, as Paul Anderson did, I want to do a haunted house movie in space. I want to do, you know,
Event Horizon, and
yeah,
then with Soldier, he basically took Shane, the Western, and made it into space. You know, just took,
exactly.
you know,
Exactly. So when you can mix the genres, and then it makes it kind of easier to take what some people might consider trash and other people consider a guilty pleasure and other people who just revel in it, and say, you know what, it's a uniting kind of thing. People can enjoy this without having to be ashamed of it, and so on, and people can have more common ground.
exactly. And
And
what's funny about back to like Starship Troopers and even Soldier to a degree, you know, in light of recent events, how those films are actually relevant, you know, especially with
yeah,
Afghanistan, and all this craziness,
yeah,
that stuff that keeps going on. So you know, it's like, so you know, it just remains relevant. In fact, I think
yeah,
when Soldier was made, it was pre 9/11. So you know,
yeah,
it was before that any war had, you know, a new war had broken out. So it's like, yes, it's way ahead of its time. Um,
yeah.
and it's
You know,
about
I
kind of,
think
it's about like,
I think that Paul Anderson took the idea of, you know, we were already in America considered kind of the world police, you know, before Team America. And what if you extrapolated that to its logical conclusion? And that's really kind of what, you know, building a better soldier, instead of the RoboCop idea of that kind of augmentation, just what if you bred them and really in indoctrinated them?
indoctrinate. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Which was
And the whole question of humanity and the lack thereof, or trying to breed it and
dehumanized,
train it out of people.
dehumanized.
And what I found really interesting, which wasn't a thing per se, it wasn't a defined thing back when Soldier came out, but it is now, is the fact that if you watch it, it's really about PTSD. It's about the fact that, um, how does somebody who's trained to kill all the time protect civilians but shoot through them if you have to? And how do you reintegrate back into society? You know, and you read stories now about people who come back, and the only way they can feel safe is they won't sleep in their bedrooms. They will sleep in their backyards in a hole they've dug in the backyard. I mean, there are cases that are that extreme.
Exactly.
So the film, like you said, now has a relevance that it didn't have, because what was like fantasy, like, oh, this is too far, it'll never happen like this, and then it happens like that. And
Absolutely.
that's exactly what you have. So
It's like
um
they become institutionalized. That's all they can do. And of course, like you say, it touches on it perfectly, because he's lost away. You know, like so many of these soldiers are when they come back home.
yeah,
But
they
they
fight and die and get maimed for their country, and then they come back and sometimes they get spit on.
yeah, they
We
just
went
get,
through all that with Vietnam here in the
exactly,
States. That was the
like,
period I grew up in. So, you know, I
exactly.
was
And
born here in the States, so I'm totally, it's not like I came here from another country like all the Vietnamese refugees who came here after Vietnam. But it's really interesting to see how, as the cultures changed, a movie that was marginalized, or, you know, I can't believe it only has as a 13% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think if more people watched it today, they'd probably say, hey, you know what, this is a really good film.
it's
And
funny
I
because,
certainly felt that seeing it. I certainly felt that way when we watched the Crew screening. We thought, this is a really good film. Kurt Russell's fantastic. And I was always joking, this is his Terminator. which is he doesn't say more than 100 words in the show.
It's funny actually, Ivan, is that I've spoken to the screenwriter David Peoples, and you might want to tell Jim this. It's a really interesting story. It's David Peoples. He wrote the Terminator. He wrote Soldier in 1984 when he saw. He was so influenced by the Terminator. He wrote Soldier back in 1984, and he was so. I mean, he'd already written Blade Runner. He had written Unforgiven. So he wrote Soldier in 1984 after seeing the Terminator. Yeah. So and he said he was so stunned by what Cameron had done. It wasn't just a B movie. It worked on other levels. And I think that's what you say. Like Soldier did. It was working on other levels. I mean, I've got the original script. He sent me. I've spoken to David, and it's like another level. The movie was changed. Various things were changed. Like say, it always happens. Things change, and it's a shame. I mean, I love the film, and I love what he had written, which is definitely Jim had it when they did Rambo 2. Jim's Rambo 2 script was radically different from what.
Well, I've seen the two of them side by side. Jim's original script was like this, and Stallone's rewrite was like this. Because he wanted to speak less, and actually, if you read that original First Blood Part 2 script,
mission, isn't it?
There's a character in it who is basically Hudson.
There you go.
With a lot of the same lines, and when Stallone cut him out of his Rambo script, he said, "Hell, I really like this character and his lines. I'm going to put him into."
That was supposed to be Travolta. That was supposed to be Travolta, I believe, as well. The partner as well. And it's funny because a lot of those ideas went into his Vietnam allegory, Aliens, which Aliens again is basically a war film. And again, like people, I've got friends that wouldn't even watch films like that, but I try and explain to them the kind of meanings behind it, and they don't get it. Some of them do, some of them don't.
Well, a lot of them don't want to take things seriously that they haven't taken seriously because they probably dissed them. I have to say that for a long time, I didn't see Rambo for a long time because when it came out, it was tied to a lot of really jingoistic stuff. Reagan was praising the movie and all sorts of.
We get to win,
and so there was this, when you're in college and tends to be kind of liberal in college, and it's like, they're mostly Democrats and progressives as opposed to Republicans and conservatives sometimes, and so it's like, oh, we don't, not interested in that kind of stuff, and it's just a jingoistic, whatever, trying to rewrite history to win the Vietnam War. And then later I actually saw it and I was like, this is a freaking great action film, and it's really well done, and it still has a lot of character in it and stuff. And so it I go back now and I look at the films that I kind of maybe dismissed earlier in my experience, and usually you'll find there are things that are worth seeing it for, of merit. Exactly.
Exactly.
I hope that happens with Soldier, because there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Absolutely. And I think the visual look of the film, I think the performance, because it's about a man who doesn't really speak, but it's driven on how he becomes, or how he realizes his lost humanity. And I think that kind of is what was so important about the idea of it, really. And it's so relevant to what we're in.
And Kurt's performance is fantastic. It's almost all visual, and I love the fact that he calls everyone, including Connie Nielsen, sir. Of course, that immediately said the relationship between Peppermint Patty and Marcy in the Peanuts comics, because Marcy always calls Peppermint Patty sir, which is kind of funny if you're a you know, again, that's an American thing perhaps, but
You'd get it though. You would get it.
yeah,
I mean, I'm sure I would if I'd done research, and you know, you'd understand it. So you know, it's you know, I think
yeah,
that it was like again, like Kurt Russell was known for like his Snake Plissken, his all these kind of The Thing, and all these kind of cult kind of
and the comedies he did with Goldie Hawn.
Overboard and
Yeah,
Big Trouble in Little
yeah,
China. You know, I mean, they're
yeah.
great. He's a throwback to Clint Eastwood and John Wayne.
Well,
You know,
well, he was a
and
huge, as you noted, he was a huge Disney kid.
that's right.
You know, and the rumor was that his name was one of the last things Walt Disney said on his deathbed.
That's right. Walt really
So,
had a real liking to him. I mean,
yeah,
all the makeup department guys I've spoken to, and all his personal assistant said, like, you know, how he would tell them stories of Walt and how they both got on really well, and
yeah,
you know, I mean, it's when you think about it, his career. I mean, he's like unbelievable. You know, I mean, it's he's been around for such a long time, and he's still around. You know, it's
yeah.
he's had quite a career.
My partner Casey, I think, worked with him on set. She had worked on Vanilla Sky, and he was one of the supporting players in that show. And you know, great guy from what I hear. Really, really
Oh,
nice guy.
pro.
So
I mean, all the everyone I've spoken to, so professional. Just absolutely a nice guy. I mean, all the makeup guys, production design, especially even on Soldier, everyone was just because he really had to train for this film. Like,
yeah,
you know, it was quite a undertaking, physical, really
yeah.
physical.
I took a moment to not only rewatch the film yesterday, I also listened to the entire commentary that Paul Anderson and Jeremy
Jason
Bolt and
Jason
Jason
Isaacs.
Isaac did. Yeah, yeah. And it was you know, as you mentioned, Kurt broke his ankle a couple weeks into the show, which is really funny that you mentioned Terminator being one of David Peoples' inspirations, is because Linda Hamilton really badly sprained her ankle shooting the film, and they had to completely rearrange the schedule because, of
Wow.
course, she couldn't do all that running, you know, running down the street from the Terminator as he's driving the truck and all that stuff.
In the original, yeah, you can.
In the original, yeah,
yeah, because you can sort of see that she's in pain in the film.
yeah.
I mean, you can, you know, it must be from when you know, she broke her
Yeah.
broke her foot. You know, I mean, wow, that's strange, isn't it? The irony there,
Well,
irony. You know, it's funny how they parallel. You know, it's
well, you do know the classic actors, you know, well wishing to other actors is break a leg. So so there may be something to it. Back to Soldier though, one of the things that was one of the most fun, absolute fun things for me at least on the show, especially when we're doing graphics, is to play with stuff on the screen and do Easter eggs. That was one of the really fun things. And one of the last shots I think we got on the show was, oh, we want to do this graphic to kind of cap off the whole montage of war scenes at the beginning, and where, you know, Kurt's going through and shooting people, and all that Moscow incident and all of those things. And they wanted us to do a shot where we see a kind of a dossier and the combat history, so that it kind of leads right off of that. And they specifically said, we consider this film to be in the same universe as Blade Runner because of David Webb Peoples. And, you know, we have the spinner in the shot, and we did a shot where, you know, he gets knocked over by the sandstorm, and we had to add digital debris and dust. And so, you know, we saw the sequence and said, oh yeah, that's a spinner, nice. And so we were asked to do this shot, and it was going to then transition to the shot of him sitting there and, you know, status between wars, right? And I remember Ed Jones telling me, okay, here are my specific instructions from the director, he wants to make sure that the combat history includes the things that we have tattooed on Kurt's arm, so that it's, some of the references to Blade Runner. And so they said, Shoulder of Orion, Hazard Gate, these things, and said, okay, make sure that those are in the graphic. That's all we need, for that. Whatever else you want, it's just gack, it's just junk, wallpaper stuff. And I was like, okay, no problem. And so if you see the shot, the first featured stuff is the combat history, and it's got the Battle of the Six Moons and
Aliens,
Argentine moons, and
all these references, all these Easter eggs to all the other.
Yeah. Well, the combat history is the first 6 things of what he wanted, of what Paul had asked for, and it's like, no problem, do that. And so you see all of those, and then I had more space because the shot is longer, and I'm like, okay, what do I put in there? And so if you look at that shot under the combat history, the next 3 final things under the ones that were officially requested are actually from Star Trek II. So it's the Nibian moons and and those are all Khan's quotes from Shakespeare.
That's right, isn't it? Isn't it the Battle of Khan? Star Trek II,
the Wrath of Khan.
The Wrath of Khan, yes, sorry, the Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, and there's a point in that movie where they're trying to Khan's guys are trying, Joaquin, played by Justin Scott, is trying to get Khan to lay off of Kirk. They have a ship, let him just go off in the galaxy. Why do you have to go on this revenge kick? And Khan does this great speech about, he tasks me and I shall have him, and then he says, I'll chase him around the moons of Nibia and around the Antares maelstrom and round perdition's flames before I give him up. And I think that was a quote from Shakespeare, but I took those 3 things and I put those in as battles in Todd's combat history. So if you're a Star Trek fan or a science fiction fan, you'll see those in there. Yeah, or a Shakespeare fan.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it was like, okay, if I'm going to go into Star Trek 2, what else can I do here?
Was it God into the Galaxy? Not God into the Galaxy.
Hitchhiker's Guide.
Hitchhiker's Guide. Yeah.
So I started putting in Hitchhiker's Guide. I put in Doom. I put in Warner Brothers, Marvin the Martian references. There's a reference to an old American West Coast local radio station gag that was in there, which is it was a Montgomery Ward T2000 semi-automatic revolver, which of course makes no sense, and from a comedy routine. I put that in there as part of his ordnance training. There's a laser bolo, which is a reference to Battlestar Galactica, the original. There's of course the M41A pulse rifle
from Aliens,
and the smart gun from Aliens, and then I started doing the commendations, and that was all me. That was me saying, okay, what has Kurt Russell been in so far? Okay, we're gonna make, yeah. So the O'Neill Ring Award, and and the McCaffrey Fire Award for Backdraft.
Cash, Tango and Cash.
The Cash Award, yeah. Tango and Cash, and I was just having way too much fun.
Yeah, I mean, and it's great because it does they're kind of people who are like you and I who are film, we can spot it. But there's people who wouldn't, and
well, we love Easter eggs, and because it kind of says, hey, we're in your tribe. And it's funny because I didn't know Paul Anderson at all, and from what I can tell, he seems to be as much of a geek as all of us, as any of us. And so I turned in the shot. I remember thinking, oh, are they going to get mad at it because is that going to pull people out of the movie? And I get the word back that Kurt saw it and loved it, and so and I think they even mentioned it in the commentary, just pointing it out. So I'll take that as an affirmative, as a compliment, exactly. But I love doing those kind of things. There's other references. If you look at the Trinity Moon graphic,
That's at the end,
I'll
isn't it?
send you. I'll
Yeah.
send you some. I'll send you some JPEGs of my original graphics on this if you want.
Oh, that'd be
Maybe
lovely.
it'll be. Maybe it'll help help you in your book. But yeah, I was putting. Let me see if I think I sent it to you. I sent you an email just before I logged on. If you.
Oh,
If you
oh, I must have. I will look at it. Yeah, no.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
did it.
There's a
Oh
graphic
yeah,
in there that the
I
one
see
where
it.
he touches the screen. And if you look on the search results on the right-hand side of the screen, I don't know if you have it up.
Oh yeah, just having a look. Yeah, just having a look. I got it. It's just coming up. It's look, Trinity. Yeah, on the right hand side. Yeah, you've got the search results.
Yeah.
Trinity moons, galactic
Yeah,
coordinates.
on the right-hand side, of the graphic, next to the big moon graphic,
Yes.
you'll see a list of search results.
Yeah, search results. You've got the ANCODE system, the
A
Kessel,
NOAT system.
the OAT system, the Kessel binary, Planet 10, Trinity moons. Yeah, got it. Yeah.
So all of those for, I mean, the NOAT system was from Empire Strikes Back, hence the ESB on the second line.
Oh yeah.
And Imini R7 NGC 321 is a reference to a original Star Trek episode, Taste of Armageddon, which is why it says TOA under that. Kessel, of course, is from A New Hope.
Wow.
Planet 10 is from The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai. Slarty Bartfast is, of course, a character from Hitchhiker's Guide, hence the HHG. Trinity Moons is from Soldier, so it says JWP because that's Jerry Weintraub Productions.
Oh, the producer. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and then Ursa Minor Beta was also from Hitchhiker's Guide.
Oh wow.
So,
Wow.
so yeah, I tended to go overboard with my geekdom, and
that's
sometimes
awesome.
it works. Nowadays, people are used to it because of Marvel and other shows, and so people actually look for them now, which kind of takes the Easter eggy idea away, but it also is something fun, and it's a way that if other people are understanding Easter eggs, maybe they're also understanding the kind of love that science fiction fans have had for things, and in a lot of cases we do them as tributes to the things we like, and they're kind of little shout outs from one fan to another, which is kind of fun. So, as long as it doesn't pull people out of the show, it's a fun thing to try to do.
Oh, that's really amazing. I mean, I was just having a look. Actually, I was having a look at your PDF as well. It had all the what you were doing. I will have a good look at that, because that's was it from the time of the film?
Yeah, it was from the time of the film. That's just why it's a PDF grab of our long defunct website, and we used to do this for all the shows we had. The site's no longer online because the company's no longer extant, but we try to write up the stuff in detail, because a lot of times, as you see, we didn't get any credits other than just the company name on Soldier as one of the kind of additional effects companies. And so what I always try to do is, when I was running a company, I would make sure that we would put credits on the website for all the people who actually worked on it from our shop, so that they get some credit in there.
Brilliant. I mean, I've spoken to Craig Barron, who sent me some pictures of transparencies of the green screen shots and all the stuff on the planet that he worked on. I mean, he said he couldn't really. Yeah, he said he's going to try and arrange a time where we can chat. I think he's just kind of busy, like everyone, like everyone is, or people are doing. People just get this, just daily things, just daily life. And but you know, he sent me quite a few photos and a sheet of the stuff, all the stuff that he'd done, and it was fascinating, really. You know, and even now hearing you was interesting, and I'm glad that you liked the film, because I think as you say, it's ahead of its time.
Yeah,
It's relevant to what well, it's relevant, and it's funny because so David Peoples, he wrote Soldier, and then he wrote 12 Monkeys, which is again is another relevant film.
yeah,
It's about a virus,
yeah.
you know. So he,
I was a huge fan of the original that
La
12
Jetty,
Monkeys was based on, La
La
Jetée. Yeah,
Jetty, yeah, La Jetty. I remember
yeah,
studying that in film, and again,
yeah.
how scarily relevant that, even though it was like a black and white. I think yeah, it was a black and white film, and you know they used just kind of more like photos, and from what I remember, and
It was all
it
photographs
was all
except for
photographs,
one shot.
and it for
Except for
one
one
shot,
shot.
and
Yeah.
if I remember, it was short as well, wasn't it? It wasn't like a
It was a
long. It was a short. It
no, it
was
was a
quite
short.
short.
It was a
Yeah, it was a
short. You can
short.
find it online, probably on YouTube. It's great. It's,
Because I studied
it's
it
in
in
French. You
film.
need subtitles.
I
Yeah,
studied it in film. I remember that it was one of the things that one of our teachers said we have to watch, and you know, and
yeah.
we kind of watched that. Then we watched 12 Monkeys, and you know, and that was yeah, very interesting because it's kind of, when was that made anyway? When was La Jetée? When was that?
60s, in the
Okay, okay.
1960s, probably late 60s. Chris
It,
Marker did that. Yeah,
it's funny
one of the
because
French New Wave guys.
it's got kind of a, he must have been alive when the war happened, so it's got that kind of feel from,
Yeah,
because I think it was World War I. You had the Spanish flu pandemic, so he must have been
right.
around for that. Chris must have been around for that, so then he probably used that in the film because it has that documentary. You know,
Well,
you like, you know,
I don't recall there being
was there?
a virus component in the original.
No,
It
no,
was just it was about, a
war, like
dystopian
war.
society. It was either always at war and everybody lived in these bunkers underground, and he was obsessed by this picture of this woman, and he
Like
gets
chemical
basically,
warfare, you know,
yeah,
or
he
you
gets
know,
put into an experiment in which he gets to be sent, he gets to, go back and somehow at least see what the world was like before this. And um so it was a short film. It was like only, I think, 10 minutes, maybe a little longer, but it was great, and it was all done in stills, long lens stills, so everything felt really claustrophobic. And then when he gets back into time, all the stills are wide angle, and then at certain point, one of them starts moving, one of the shots starts moving, because it's like he's finally there, it's real to him, you know. And it made a huge impression on me in film school, let's put it that way.
it's
um
very uh, it kind of struck a chord. I remember there was Battleship Potemkin, which was another one that was quite shocking as
yeah.
well. And
Well, and you've seen multiple homages to that. And the most famous
Untouchables,
one, I think, Brazil as well.
Brazil, the Untouchables, yeah, and Carlito's Way. There's all these kind of references that
Yeah,
obviously filmmakers that are just obviously greatly influenced by
yeah,
those films. You know, I mean, even Cameron must have been influenced by La Jetty. I know Cameron was influenced by the Road Warrior, the Terminator. I think he even said it at Mad Max 2, the Road Warrior. It, the Terminator is basically the Road Warrior, but with machines, more or less,
yeah.
and time travel. You know, but
Well, again, the Road Warrior was also a Western.
exactly, yeah.
Lone man coming out to help the village, right?
Shane,
Yeah,
especially Road Warrior, it's the feral child, and Max it's definitely Shane. You know, a Western on wheels. You know,
yeah, yeah. And again, Road Warrior, fantastic movie. You know, so I think that all of these, all of these films inform other films and also inform the zeitgeist. And we go through these periods in which, people relegate certain things to being, just pop or something that's like, oh, it's just a B movie. It's empty calories, but you might enjoy it at the time, but it's nothing you'll remember. And then other people suddenly look back 10, 20 years later and say, oh my God, they did a movie that is doing exactly what is actually happening now. Although I don't know if you've heard this, but here in the States, there are some people who are some less than intelligent people who are afraid of getting the vaccine because they saw I Am Legend, and number one, believe that the movie takes place in 2021 when in fact it takes place in 2012, transpose the two digits, and they believe that it was a vaccine in that movie that turned people into zombies, and therefore they don't want to be turned into a zombie, and that's why they refuse to take the vaccine. So
I remember it's funny, the original, the Mega Man was another one I liked as well, with Charlton Heston. I thought
that was technically the second
version, yeah, because you had the
version.
Vincent Price was the
Last Man on Earth. Prior to that.
And again, it's funny how these films, they get remade or they get regurgitated, which is I do like the Mega Man. That was
me too. The saddest thing about that was part of what I consider the Charlton Heston dystopia series, Soylent Green.
Soylent Green, and,
yeah. And Planet of the Apes, Soylent Green, Mega Man, and the sad thing with I Am Legend, when they finally made it with Will Smith, is that they didn't have the courage to keep the original ending, which I'm sure you've seen, the quote unquote deleted ending.
Yeah,
which was true to the book. Where he's the bad guy. He's the nightmare, of this new species that they call, vampires or zombies or however you want to put it.
Disease people, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it's just a shame because I mean, I do like that version, but like you say, the ending compromised.
Yeah. Again, it's a failure of will at a certain point. And it's true. I mean, you have to decide, okay, if we do this kind of crowd pleasing ending, it will make more money, but this one will make people think. What are you going to do as a filmmaker? What choices do you have a filmmaker if a studio decides they want to do things differently? So that's always the challenge.
It's funny because like yesterday I was watching with my dad. I was watching the Bridges of Madison County, which is not a special effects film. It's not anyway a special effects film, but it's a good film.
Yes.
And simple film, but sometimes the simplest films are the best. And and also looking forward to Cry Macho, the new Clint Eastwood film. That's good as well. His films are great as well. He made some great films. And he was originally going to do. He was originally going to do Soldier. You know that he was originally interested in the original script.
Really?
But he couldn't. Speaking to David Peoples, the screenwriter, I think after he'd done Unforgiven, I think it was definitely Soldier was on one of Clint's scripts to do. But I think he said he couldn't visualize how to. He could handle the character stuff well, but I don't think he could kind of visualize how to visualize the kind of future or the world that it's in. I mean, but then he did do.
Well, he's a different kind of action hero, though. I don't think he's going to be one of those guys who's going to just go through and, especially later in his life, do the Dirty Harry thing where he's just blowing people away. And he certainly is not the kind of actor who would want to play the character who, kills innocents, so.
But yeah, no, we're. I mean, I'll push you off now, but thanks for your time.
Hey, no problem. Hopefully you got some information.
Oh,
I'll try
brilliant.
to send you a couple other graphic screens. I don't know if I can get any of the shots from the film because I'd have to try to pull those off of some really old digital tape formats that I don't really have access to machines anymore. But the PDF I sent you has a lot of the information that pretty much everything, and hopefully we covered everything else. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to email me. But otherwise, have a great evening.
Yeah, stay safe,
right.
and I mean, whenever you're free, we could always chat again. I'd love to stay in touch and keep you posted with my.
You've got my my email, so I'll have to look up your Ghostbusters doc. How is it available? Is it
Crackle TV, Crackle TV, iTunes, Amazon, your Google Play, all these things. You'll be
Is
able
it
to
on
get.
any of the streaming services?
You can even probably buy it on YouTube. You can buy stuff on YouTube, so you can get on YouTube.
Yeah.
All
right. I'll try to give it a look.
Definitely.
Right.
You'll like it a lot. Yeah. Take care.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye.